Kia ora everyone, my name is Aaron. I am a PhD student at the University of Canterbury and I've been invited to share the findings of my master's research for the Sticks Living Laboratory Trust. So my research focuses on what makes invasive plants successful in new ranges. So it's a bit more abstract than just research focusing purely in the sticks, but I think there's really helpful stuff here that can help sort of contextualize the work we do. So one thing that is relevant to sticks is the plant I'm working with, Erythranthe guttata, monkey musk. It is a common weed of riparian riverside areas, and it's found right through the sticks. As of right now, when I'm recording this, or in the next couple of weeks, anyone out in the field or out along the river is going to see it. It's bright yellow flowers just covering the banks right through the catchment. And this plant is spreading throughout Canterbury. It arrived here from America a couple of hundred years ago, and it's very common in lowland areas, and it's becoming increasingly prevalent in upland areas of Canterbury as well. So what we wanted to know is this plant evolving as it moves into different parts of Canterbury? Are there changing success strategies it's showing in different parts of our region? We also wanted to characterise how it responds to high levels of nutrients. So obviously for us in Canterbury and us here at the Sticks in a sort of urban catchment, we're really vigilant and really aware of the high nutrient levels in our waterways. And invasive plants in general are really responsive to high nutrient levels. So we wanted to look at the scale of those responses, and we wanted to look at whether there were specific evolved strategies. So areas where they're investing those extra resources into some traits, but not others. So the sort of defining, like unifying theme of this is what sort of success strategies are these plants using during their invasions? So to do that, we collected plants from all across upland and lowland Canterbury. This was actually this collecting took place before I heard about the Sticks Trust. So we don't have any collected from the Sticks itself, but we have other plants from Christchurch, and having worked in the Sticks and in other rivers, I can say that what we're finding for these plants is in Christchurch is going to apply to the plants we have in the Sticks as well. So we collected all these plants, about 300 in total, and we grew them in common gardens in a shared environment at both the University of Canterbury and up at the university's field station in Cass. And as well as that, we also gave them 2 different nutrient treatments to look at the nutrient effects. So some of them received, I just gave them 3 times as much fertilizer as the others. And then as they grew, we measured a whole range of growth and reproductive traits to sort of synthesize from all of those what sort of responses they show and where. So what we found, in terms of the upland lowland differences, we found that there were different strategies evolving between those 2 populations. So lowland plants are a bit more oriented towards growth. So they have they're markedly taller, they have larger leaves, and they're generally sort of more aggressive growers, whereas the populations from the high country areas are a bit more oriented towards reproduction. So they produce a lot more flowers and flower noticeably earlier. So that's actually a really common pattern along altitudinal gradients. So in upland areas where the environment's harsher, you get a selection pressure for what's called reproductive assurance. So with a shorter growing season, worse conditions, there's a real pressure to get flowering started and get the next generation out there. But then in lowland areas, you don't have that same pressure. The environment's kinder, but you do have more competition. So that creates a selection pressure for more growth. So we think that's what's driving this difference. And what's really cool about this is that we're seeing this sort of differentiation starting to emerge in plants which have only been here a couple of hundred years and along an altitudinal gradient which is about 600 meters, so comparatively mild. So that's really exciting to see. In terms of the nutrient responses, what we're seeing, mostly what you'd expect. On the left there, you're seeing their biomass and you're seeing a big jump when you give them those extra nutrients. So nothing too surprising there. You give plants more fertilizer and they grow more. But we did see some of those evolved trade-offs of different resource investment. One of the really interesting ones we found, which was new for this species, was a trade-off in seed size and number. So when you give these plants more fertilizer, more nutrients, they produce more seeds, but the seeds they produce don't get meaningfully bigger. So what that tells us is that seed number contributes to fitness and success in these plants in a way that seed size doesn't. So why we think that is that these plants are only growing in like a narrow strip along the river itself. That means a lot of the seeds just don't make it. If they go too far one way, they end up falling in the water and getting washed away and probably dying. If they go too far the other way, they end up getting up on the banks, and as the folks working out in the field will tell you, they then immediately get smothered by all the tall grass there. So the only seeds which survive are the ones which randomly fall in this narrow strip of habitable ground. And this creates a random filter that having bigger seeds doesn't help with, but having more seeds creates it gives you more rolls of that dice. So we think that's what's driving this trade-off we're seeing, and it's really exciting to see these sort of expected selective drivers creating patterns which we haven't noticed before, but which make sense for these plants and how they live. As for how this relates to our work here in the sticks, I think what's interesting and important about this is that it sort of contextualizes like the logic behind and the importance of some of the work we do. So the fact these plants are more aggressive growers, that we've got these lowland populations which are a bit more selected towards aggressive growth, that's really important for informing the control work we do. So we know that a lot of the native herbs we have in the sticks, or the ones that we have left in the sticks, are often very poor competitors compared to invasive plants, which are usually very good competitors. And finding that these invasive plants are not only good competitors, but they're also being selected to be even better competitors, highlights the importance we do of helping keep these weeds under control with our shading them out through riverside plantings, with our manual kind of control operations. It highlights the seriousness of the threat and the importance of the work we do to help. And then in terms of the nutrient quality, I think there's some really interesting context and information here. So what I've got here with these graphs, I've flipped it around. So now you're seeing the excess nutrient treatments on the left and then the lower nutrient levels on the right. And that's sort of illustrating the kind of benefits you can get when you keep those nutrient levels in the water down. So when you're working to keep that water quality good, you're seeing drops of, this is effectively per square foot. So you're seeing drops of hundreds of flowers per square foot. The plants, as you can see from the middle box plot there, are getting appreciably shorter. Then on the right, you're seeing they're producing much less seed mass. So that means less spread capability, less for the next generation. So the kind of the advocacy work, the land management work, the stream restoration we do that sort of gets that nutrient levels down and keeps that water quality good is really important. It is having feedback into helping suppress the growth and reproductive capabilities of these weeds. And what I think is really important about this is that this low nutrient level here isn't unrealistically low. It isn't a hypothetical, what if humans never lived here kind of level. It's still a lot of nutrients. So you don't need to get water quality perfect. You don't need to get the nutrient levels down perfect. As long as you're making those drops and making that difference, you are suppressing the performance of these troublesome invasive plants. And I think that's really important for us in an urban catchment to know that that is a value in the work we're doing. So to the sticks, Trust, thank you for having me and letting me talk on this. I hope it's been useful. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. Good evening.